We're live. We're live. Will Leach.
Hello, Steve. How are you today?
I'm doing excellent. Walking the ducks here. Hey, everybody. It's the Mindstate Marketing Hour with Will Leach, our favorite scientist. He's written a book. We talk about it. Today's topic, should you change your business direction? Here are the top signs it's time to try something new. Will, what's going on? You going through a midlife crisis?
I went through a quarter life crisis. Did we talk about that? Where I grew my beard out when I was like 30. I have not gone through a midlife crisis. But it's always a good time, Steve, to talk about change. When should we change? All that stuff. No midlife crisis yet. Not yet. I'm still a young man.
He's a young man, folks. He's not there in the midlife crisis yet. I may have had one myself. But this is the Mindstate Marketing Hour, where we learn how to use science to connect with your clients from our favorite scientist, Will Leach. He's written a book with a new look, Marketing to Mind States. Look at the hands, the little happy hands. What do they call them? Jazz hands with the is he conducting?
Yep, he's a magician. He's a conductor. Either way.
So Will, how are things going? It's been a couple of weeks since you and I connected.
It has. Things are okay here. We've had a turn of great weather here in Dallas. I'm not sure about you, but we were real hot about 2 weeks ago in the hundreds, or at least 100, I think. And now we're back into the 70s, but it's going back up. So summer is quickly approaching, but we still got a few days of spring and doing a little bit of travel. I've been at a couple conferences. I was at a conference last week. I was at another conference the week before. So speaking engagements are going up. Clients are out there talking about behavioral science, and that is a good thing for us.
Well, awesome sauce. So today's topic, should you change your business direction? Here are the top signs. It's time to try something new. That sounds like danger. It's easier just to stick to the way we've always done things. Well,
that's what it feels. I think from an evolutionary psychology perspective, it feels good to not change. It feels good to not want to, do things. But I will tell you that there are times in your business where change is needed, whether you like it or not. And if you do not change, then there are some real repercussions. And you probably know a lot about that out there if you've been listening and you've been along for the ride. When we went through COVID, a lot of change in businesses happened after COVID. And if you didn't change and you're successful, you're one of the few lucky ones, because most companies that didn't change are no longer with us. So there are certain times you have to change, Steve, even if you don't like it. Get out of your cheese. What is it? Who Moved My Cheese? You ever read that book? Who's Moved My Cheese? Yeah, we had to do that.
I remember watching this movie about Peter the Great, and there was this one scene where he was standing there yelling at the boyars or whoever the guys that he had to argue with, and he's standing there and the fire's burning in the palace or something, and he's I'm going to drag you into the future whether you like it or not. That's
hopefully
the way
it's not that, but yes, geez.
That's the way it's
that level of change
felt.
Yeah.
That's the way it's felt in the past couple of years. It's like you're being dragged into the future, you're being swept along for sure, whether you like it or not.
It is. And I was being very honest, where biologically, and I think, just as a species, we don't like change because there's safety in things that are, that feel trusted and the same. Because when you change, there comes an opportunity to fail. So we don't like change. There's lots of great consultants out there who focus on change management, billions of dollars, I'm sure, have put on it. And like I said, that book, Who Moved My Cheese, is one of the simplest books to read, but it's used in corporations all over the world. Why? Because so many people fear change. But sometimes you're going to need to do pivots. You're going to need to do a pivot on your business. But sometimes you don't know when. What's kind of a temporary thing or something that you should really change, a factor out there that's making you change. And so I came up with 4 things that I've learned myself on when I think it's time to make a change. At least this is when I made changes in my business.
So when we have these topics that you pick for these conversations, Will, there's a backstory to it.
Mhm.
I guess this is something maybe you've been wrestling with. You wanna confess? You wanna share?
Yeah,
You wanna
jeez.
be vulnerable?
I know. You know what? I will talk about. Well, there is. We are going through change right now in our business right now. I'll talk a little bit about that in my fourth point. But yeah, we're always evolving. But there's some new things that are happening because of changes in the marketplace, changes in technology, where there's big opportunities. And because of that, with some other factors that are happening to me, maybe personally, it's like, you know what? Maybe this is a time to take us a pivot, a new direction. So we will talk about that in our. So stay tuned in our fourth bullet point here. We're going to talk a little bit about what's happening with my business and why I think it is time for a slight pivot.
All right. So we're always adapting, but sometimes you need to like not just make a little adjustment. You need to just kind of break things down and rebuild them up.
Yeah, that's right. I think that we're constantly adjusting. I think if you're in business, if you're a brand out there, if you have your own business, you're always constantly adjusting to feedback. You read a book, you learn about it. There's all sorts of adjustments. What I mean here, there's sometimes complete pivots that are needed. And if you're lucky not enough to not have to ever have pivoted, good for you. But most companies, have to make these pretty dramatic pivots based upon maybe personal circumstances or financial circumstances or whatever. And so what I want to talk about today are those big pivots, not the small little minute changes that you can make, these small changes, but something where you're really thinking about the business totally differently and you're going to invest in that, or you're going to pull back investment in something that's maybe not working.
When I'm thinking about the pivots that I've made in my past, it's like
Yeah.
first I have to go through this evaluation or this audit process to where am I giving up? Have I stuck to this enough? I'm questioning my commitment to the previous direction I had chosen to go. And then am I just like pouting? Am I throwing a fit? Is that why I'm changing things? I go to those conversations internally.
I know. And I don't have an answer to this. When in your experience have you said, you know what? No, I have given it long enough and it's time to change? Like, what are some of those points? Like, how do you know? Or do you ever know?
Well, I so when this COVID thing happened, everybody was putting on the brakes and like just going, what's happening? So they pulled back. That meant business pulled back on me. People that were getting ready to make a commitment waved it off. And so then it was a matter of, oh, I need to survive for a bit. Then after kind of survived, then it was like, all right, time to get back to the way we were. And worked hard on getting back. And then one day the light bulb went on. It's like, hey, you're working to get back to the way it was, but have you noticed we're not going back to the way it was, right? And
Yeah.
then it was like, oh my gosh, now I need to pivot. But where?
Mhm.
That's where I was convinced is like I really worked hard.
Yeah.
It's not like I didn't know what I was doing. It worked in the past.
Mhm.
I hadn't changed. It's like all of a sudden I was just stupid.
Mhm.
No.
Yeah.
So then why was it not getting back? And that's when I realized, no matter how hard I was trying, my customers had changed. The market had changed.
Mhm.
Expectations had changed. I
Yeah, that's what I
needed
was
to
asking.
change.
When was that time? Do you remember? Like was it when the point is like, wait a minute, I'm back to normal. I'm back to where I was, but maybe this is a stone. It's no longer going to work. Do you remember
Yeah,
that moment?
well, it was about probably a year. I really worked hard to.
Yeah.
It's like it took us. You do self-evaluation. What did am I doing something wrong? What
Mhm.
do I need to tighten up? What do I need to improve? Work on those. Sell it to the team. Keep being um, diligent. Right.
Mhm.
Reach out to folks. Let's do some free work if we have to. Right.
Yep.
And then it was like after a little bit, what's wrong here?
Mhm.
And then that's when I knew I needed to really like get my radar on and figure out where I'm going next.
Yep. That sounds like my very first bullet point then, that I have. Oh yeah. But that's what happened to me. I'm going to tell my COVID story as well. Right.
All right. So you're not making enough money. Point
You're
one.
not making enough money. Yeah, that is point blank a thing. I know it sounds so trivial, like of course, but it's actually a big deal. Like if you are not making enough money, you need to pivot. It may not be small tweaks, and that's my COVID story as well, right, Steve? You know this.
Hmm.
We were kind of starting to rock and roll with our relationship, and all of a sudden, in basically a matter of 3 days, we were going to have the very best year projected ever. That economy in 2020 was roaring. We had just landed a major retailer who was going to do hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of research. And I was going to speak. I had already set up 3 major conferences to speak at. You know, my business is all about speaking, getting on stage. A big part of my marketing is getting on stage and speaking. And within a 3-day window, it all went away. Those contracts were canceled. The speaking gigs were canceled. And so all of a sudden I went from potential lots of revenue and actually revenues coming in to where I saw nothing in a pipeline very, very quickly. So I think I talked about this to you. I drank for a day. I I went in the fetal position. But then I was like, hey, I got employees. I got to do something different. And so what we were doing was we had to move from away from in-person research in people's homes, in people's stores. That's where we did a lot of our research, almost all of our research, and in-person events where I'm speaking, I'm shaking hands with all these customers and clients, things like that, to virtual events. So what I was doing as any kind of webinar I could, any kind of I'm shifting my speeches and my talks into my own webinars. You helped me out with that actually, Steve. And then going into an online platform, even though it wasn't ideal for what we did, we had to make that transition. And I was smart enough, like you said, I was smart enough to say, because I was on the client side for many, many years. I was on the brand side of things. And I said, once an organization moves to a new methodology, generally they don't go back. They just don't. We're always looking for new innovation, new types of things. And so I was thinking to myself, I'm going to a whole bunch of different conferences without getting on a flight, and I'm not having to go to a hotel room, and I'm getting research back, or I'm giving research that's pretty darn good. Is it exactly as good as what I could do in person? No. Was it really good enough? I started thinking to myself, it's pretty darn good. And I put my kind of client hat on. I said, wait a minute. Once the CFO of these companies starts seeing that, wow, my employees can go to conferences without getting on a flight and getting on a hotel, that saves us a lot of money. And all these conferences became $0. Remember, they all were free because they just wanted attendees. You couldn't pay for a conference. Same thing with the research. And so I realized if clients are kind of happy and they're nodding their head saying they got some good value out of that, I started thinking to myself, in-person research, in-person conferences are going to be different. And they just are. And 2 years later, they are. I'm not going to as many in-person conferences. We're still doing a lot of virtual conferences. I'm not doing hardly any in-person research because virtual capabilities were enough. So if I'm honest, I didn't pivot fast enough because I wanted that old time. I'm a big believer in being in context in somebody's home, talking to people in their homes, talking to people while they're shopping. And so I didn't pivot fast enough, and my business suffered because of that. It took me a couple of months actually to say, okay, we're going to try to shift to virtual. And now that we're doing it, that's almost 100% of our business now. It's actually really good research. It's really good stuff. So in that case, if you're not making enough money, if you're seeing you don't have a pipeline, guys, and if you don't see that pipeline coming back, you've got to be honest with yourself. You've got to try to pivot and see where the market is taking you.
I'm just thinking about that while you're talking. We're on this show that we do. We're going on a year and a half, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So one of my pivots that I decided is used to be that my team would take care of most of the work, the delivery work for the clients. And so one of my things was, maybe I need to figure out something that I can offer that's unique to me, to my clients, and start working with them as well. Let's keep the ones that are hanging around. Let's 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 pivot. Let's do something different. And one of the ideas that I wanted to do was I need my clients in their journey to thought leadership to become more of a really regular thought leader. So why not produce them and do a live stream like this? And so that's what you and I started doing. You remember how you felt when I first brought up the idea?
I tried to ignore it. I looked away. I ignored those emails. Yeah, I was. I didn't think it made any sense at all.
But that
A lot
was
of work. It
typical.
felt like a lot of work. It was gonna be a lot of work on me, and I was like, maybe it's okay, but who wants to listen to us? Who are
Hmm.
we? All those
Hmm.
types of things. Sure.
But that's the same thought that went through all my others' heads as well. But
Yep.
here we are, and it's been something that has been very positive.
Yep.
It's helped me explore a new area of being really impactful in our clients' lives,
Mhm.
and it helped you grow professionally as well.
Yep.
Truthfully.
Yep. Very much so. Very much so.
All right, so it brings us. Actually, that's a great segue. Your customers aren't happy.
That's right. So this takes a little bit of work because you oftentimes won't know if your customers aren't happy because customers aren't great at giving back feedback. They just quit replying to emails, or you start seeing your repeat business get slower and slower. So let me tell you a time where we made a major pivot. And it was when one of my major clients weren't happy, and they didn't come out and say they weren't happy because that's not what clients do. Nobody comes back to you in email and says, "I no longer like you." But this was a very large financial services company, and we've been doing work with them for about 4 years. In fact, at one point, they're 70% of my business. So if that's not a good place to be. Have one client is 70% of your business, but we loved them. We had a great relationship, and the head of insights there was going to go off and get a PhD, I think, or she wanted to go off and work on a degree. So she pulled me aside. I was there doing a project, and she said, "Hey, Will, I got to talk to you about this stuff." She goes, "Yeah, I'm about to leave, so I want to give you some honest feedback." I was like, "Okay, this is awesome. I always love feedback, good or bad, especially bad." And what she said was, "She goes, we love your stuff. We love the insights. We love your teams, but we cannot wait 6 to 8 weeks for research anymore. We don't have those types of luxuries in corporate world. So one of my research projects oftentimes would take 4, 6, maybe 8 weeks to do because we're in people's homes, we're in people's work, we're in their environments, we have to recruit these things, etc." So she told me was we need to be able to do a project now within 5 days. And the first thing you do is like, well, then we're not right. We're not right for you. Like, oh, we're not right for you. But that's not who we are. So you could push back on that. But what I did was I took that and I said, if they're feeling this way, how many of my other clients are feeling the exact same way? But they just haven't given me the gift of feedback. So what we did was this was probably, this wasn't too long. It was a couple of years ago. But we went and I said, okay, so what I currently do right now is I use my brain, my noggin, to look at what people say to identify these mind states. And then with these mind states, I can go tell, my clients how to better market to them, through their subconscious. And we do that through me looking at thousands and thousands of sentences, right? And I just read
Mm.
what they say, and I look for words and patterns in words, and that's how I do it. Well, very quickly, I had a friend of mine say, "Well, if you can do that, why can't technology do that?" This person introduced me to artificial intelligence. And so what we did was I created a methodology very, very quickly, in fact, to take all these transcripts, hours of people's conversations and run them through a model to where it could look for these patterns. The same thing I was doing, where if I did 20 hours worth of research or 20 hours worth of interviews, that meant I had another 20 hours to read 20 hours worth of transcripts. Now it could take those 20 hours and it could process that information in about 5 seconds, 4 seconds. Was it as good as me? Actually, surprisingly, it was pretty good, Steve. And like technology, it was pretty darn good. Like, in fact, some of the stuff that I saw was like, I don't think I would have said that. But when I looked at it, I'm like, actually, the model did a really good job. My point being is, I had to pivot to an artificial intelligence methodology because my biggest, happiest customer was telling me it's time to change.
Mhm.
And because of that, that technology has taken off into my research world, and it provides me a tool to give people when they don't have 4 weeks, they don't have 6 weeks. Sometimes we still do those 6 to 8 week projects when we really need some really unique things. But artificial intelligence allowed me to keep my customer happy. And so that's a great example for me, anyways, of me pivoting away from my current methodology, which was in person and kind of in people's homes, um, to using digital platforms to collect people's stories and then running them through an artificial intelligence model to identify the mind state, and out came a report.
Yeah, I was just relating with your thing there. Uh, with ours, we would bring them on and go through this methodology to really dial in their messaging via the story brand framework, right? And then
Yep.
then several months later, be able to implement that and begin campaigns. And it's a long game. But, one of the insights that we've recognized is that we need to quickly implement some technology and get the calendar busy for these folks, right?
Mm.
And so that's one of the things that we've had to pivot as a team. From this, we've always done this methodology first. It's a fundamental, it's a core part of our culture. But in the meantime, we need some technology quickly keeping our client busy and happy while
Yeah.
we're getting to work out these other aspects. So, yeah, relating there.
How did you realize that? Did you have like a major client like I had that came and told you, or was it just intuition?
Well, yes, there was a common pattern in pre-engagement questions, and then later kind of feedback on exits, or maybe 6 months into noticing that needing to make sure we recalibrate, resell, reset proper expectations,
Yeah.
and we're being honest, we're being upfront about this is a long game. But the client was still like going, I understand long game, but I need some wins now.
Yeah.
And and then recognizing we needed to do something, I seeing confirmations in other disconnected domains
Mhm.
was a confirmation for me. And then like, all right, what's the technology that we need to implement? And then design a team, train a team, and implement it immediately.
Yeah.
And so that's a big change.
Mhm. Very much so. Very much so. Yep. Your customers aren't happy. You're not going to make the revenue. So that's, it all kind of ties together, doesn't it? To
Hmm.
where again, it's time to pivot.
Okay, so if you're listening to this or you're watching, if you're relating, give us some thumbs up there or maybe some comments. But do you feel you're not passionate about your business anymore? This is one. I remember working. I was working for clients.
Yeah.
Working for an employer. And one of the things I never wanted to have was like this dread of going to work that day, right?
Mhm.
But then when you have those feelings, you feel conflicted. Why? What's wrong with me? And then when you start your own business, all right, now I'm passionate. But then if you have waves of like exhaustion,
Mhm.
okay, or am I not being honest? Am I like dreading the next appointment? What's wrong with me? What's going on?
I think you took it exactly where I thought, or I was hoping you would. It is life is hard. Life is long. Life has a lot of dynamics. We have friendships. We have a work role. We're fathers. We're mothers. We're sons and daughters. And so the older I get, the more I realize that passion and you wanting to get up and work hard for yourself, for your kids, for your business, for your clients is an important aspect to happiness. If you're fulfilled by accomplishing great things on behalf of others, you're going to be happier. And if you're not doing great things for others, if you are dreading going into work, if you're dreading going to the office, that could be a signal that maybe you're losing your passion. And if you're losing your passion in your business, in a world where there's just so many businesses that are out there, that if you're not passionate about your business, then it's likely going to implode on you anyways. It just is. Now, I don't mean that you have to smile and get up out of bed singing a dance every day, because that's not real life. But I always often get asked, what do you think is the best quality that makes your business successful? And almost all the time, I say it's my passion. Like, I may not understand something, but I'm passionate enough about questions that I'll go figure it out. And so here's an example of when I pivoted. So when I first started Trigger Point, I'm going to say about 2 years in, I noticed that my customers wanted me to do the design work after we did a piece of research. So I would go do a piece of research. I would then create a blueprint on how to develop better marketing. And then I was being asked, hey, can you show us what that looks like? In fact, what happened was one of our biggest clients actually said that their in-house creative team was too busy. And did we have the creative team to do the work? Because I called myself Trigger Point a behavioral research agency. You know
Mm,
why I use the word agency, Steve?
mm-mm.
It's because I thought consultant sounded too pretentious. So I called myself an agency. My client thought that meant I was an ad agency. And so when she said, could I do it? We were young in our business. We're only 2 years in. I said, of course we can. It's a big client. Of course we can do that. And then I went out and I found some freelance art director, freelance copywriter, and we did it. It was really exciting. In fact, it was really, really exciting to do this work. And it was well. And they used our work. I mean, we actually had direct mail kits that we designed get sent out to millions of potential customers, which is really cool. And then we started offering that same service, agency service, to many more clients. And after about a year, I noticed that I didn't like that world, the agency world. And here's when it really hit me. I was at a client one time and we're doing a workshop. And so on day one of the workshop, we're going to present research. On day two, we're going to present out our ad ideas. Now, we were never saying that we wanted to be an ad agency, but if you need an ad agency, we'll help you. So in this workshop, day one, we're not even showing our designs yet. And during a break, all of a sudden, I'll never forget, this team of people came in. It's almost like a movie, Steve. Remember, like in the movies where these people with business suits walk in, they all look just so dapper, and it's led by this tall, blonde, looks like Thor looking guy, perfect suit. He's got manicured nails, And he comes and goes, "Hey, my name," I can't remember. And he comes into our thing, and very quickly he's, "Oh, this is the executive vice president of huge advertising agency. And we're just here to see what's going on, and we're going to be part of your presentation tomorrow," which they were never invited the way I understood it. But here's what I found out later on. They sniffed or they heard that there's some kind of small company out there that's working with their core brand and going to present out creative. So they sent in their executive vice president and all these bigwigs. All those advertising guys, they look great. Their teeth are polished. It looks great. So they came in and they're very nice, Steve. You know how they are. They're always so nice. "Oh, hey, we love this stuff," right? That night, we were talking about going out to dinner, and they took the senior person that was supposed to be in our session. They took her out to dinner. She was a senior brand manager, I believe. And then I knew right then, I was like, this probably is not great. They took my client's boss's boss to dinner, which, okay, but I didn't feel great to me. The next morning, we woke up to an email saying, "Hey, listen, we've decided that we don't want to use day two to show these renderings, these advertising things, because we've been talking about how does this integrate with the brand. Some bigger things have come up now. So we're going to go ahead and let you guys off the hook. You don't have to do day two." And I remember that feeling of, one, I knew that there's nothing I could have done about that, Steve. Like, these people, they know what they're doing. They can protect their accounts. They know the right dinners to go to. They do great things. That's what makes these agencies so big. But I do remember thinking to myself, I was out of my league in that I didn't understand the dynamics of what happened. Word got out that there's a startup, and they came in, they squashed me just like that over dinner is my guess. They squashed me, and no longer was I this company's client. It's a big client, a big company. So they stopped looking at me as an agency. And you know what's so funny about that? That I was talking with my team. We're getting ready to go to the airport. In fact, here's what we did. We took one of those tour buses that take you, because we had a whole free day, but we weren't going to leave until the next morning. So we took one of those cool tour buses that they take you around the city, because we had nothing else to do. And so we were talking on that bus, and I told my guy, I actually felt relieved. I felt relieved because I looked down deep down inside. I'm not an agency guy. That's why I hire you, right? I'm not a creative director. I love the insights that go into that, but that's not my world. And I always felt a bit, I felt tension. I felt pressure in a world that I didn't love. I thought it was interesting, but I don't think I loved the creation elements of advertising. That a part of me just felt this weight lifted off. And then we shut down that whole group about 3 months later, because I just knew that wasn't my passion. It put a lot of stress on me. It's other people's passion for sure, not mine. And so now what we do, if we do get people who ask us to do that, I outsource that. I'll go outsource it to a local agency if I'm asked for it. But little by little, I don't get anybody asking me for it anymore, because I don't even talk about it anymore. I don't talk really about that we do design work. But that's an example. Hopefully, guys, that when you're not passionate, I didn't fight for that meeting. I kind of knew what was happening when they took that senior brand manager away. I probably knew what was happening, but I didn't fight for it. That's a sign that it was time for me to pivot out of that business. And it was a good thing that we did.
I'm thinking of your story there. That part of the business didn't connect with your why you started it in the first place. You were doing it as a favor. You were doing it to make your client happy. little out of your wheelhouse. You have the chops to set up a very good agency, but it's not what you started. And it doesn't, you would have done that if that really resonated with the why will the scientist
Yeah.
writes a book, right?
Mhm. No, I love that. Why? That's actually, I'm going to say this word and I hope you take it right. That's profound, Steve. Like it really, it is. You were profound. I think that's a great point. Like I don't know if we ever talked about this, but as an entrepreneur, you're running your own business, you're running a brand, you got to know your why. And the why is great in that it gives you direction on where to go. But people forget that the why also tells you when to not go down other paths.
Mhm.
When I first started my company, one of the biggest points of advice I got was the hardest thing to do is not, finding clients or finding projects. The hardest thing to do when you first start is not taking projects. Projects make no sense for you to do, but you're so scared you need money. And I remember
Mhm.
thinking back when that person said that, but he was absolutely right. And by year 2, I was like, wow, you get so many opportunities for different things. People want to work with you and they want to partner with you and everything else. And if you don't have a strong why, then you take on those opportunities because you don't have a clear North Star. And when you don't have that clear North Star, you get into designing agencies and you have to get manicures all of a sudden. And you have to
Polish your teeth and
yeah, you have to polish my teeth. I had to go wear suits and stuff like that. So yeah, you're right. It didn't fit my why. And I don't think I knew that at the time until you just said that.
yeah, that's, when we lose our passion about something, passion, as I think it's really misunderstood. Follow your passion and you'll be successful. Well, I think you got to resonate with your why, but your why doesn't become obvious until you go and march through the muddy forest a little bit.
Mhm.
Because in that march, you're going to experience failure.
Oh yeah.
But the thing becomes fulfilling is that you overcome some aspect of a challenge. And why did I persevere through it when I could have
Could
given
have
up?
given up.
And it was because there was this why that kept feeding your energy to overcome this thing that just wasn't easy.
That's a great. I'm sure you. That's a great with the book, right? There's a great example. You and both and I are both writers, right? Hey,
Hmm.
Michael. And there were many times we could have quit because both. I'm sure that your publisher told you the same thing it told me, right? Was that chances are you're not going to make a lot of money on this book. Like they're honest. They're like you're not going
Hmm.
to become the next you know I don't know, some of these crazy authors, Stephen
Yeah.
King or something. That's the one they used on me.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of times you could have turned around and said no, but there's something passionate about you that
Hmm.
you wanted to get your message out, and it made you overcome barrier hurdles and waking up at 7 a.m. to type until 10 or whatever those things were you were doing. You're right. It was that why, that internal why.
Yeah. It's helpful. I like Michael's comment here. Our why are our values, and it can be a helpful GPS. GPS
Mhm.
is a great way to think about it. Yeah, you think about, well, Steve, you're going to write this book, and you're going to be naked in front of everybody, and people are going to, either they're going to have feedback on your book. Why
Mhm.
are you risking hearing people comment and about
Yeah.
something that's very personal to you, so much so that you write it down and you push it out into the world,
Mhm.
and people can think, man, this is crap, right?
Yeah.
And
And they'll
some
let you
do.
know too. They let you know.
or or to be like, gosh, I love that you wrote this. Thank you for writing that, right? There's something at risk there. And it has to do with your why, is
Mhm.
why you're willing to put that out there.
I agree. I agree.
So you don't have time for your business is number 4. This
Yeah.
is
So if we're talking about, moments where you think it's time to pivot, this example of hopefully some entrepreneurs out there can identify with this. This is a characteristic of me. I do this a lot. When I get interested in something new, I go take it on. I add it to my plate. I add it to my plate. So if you guys don't know this about me, I have lots of different kind of businesses. If you think about it, I have Trigger Point, which is a marketing research company, which is the start of my entire entrepreneurial career. And then I also have a company called Mindstate Group, which is a training company. So we have videos and we have different programs to train people how to apply Mindstate marketing in their business. Well, then I'm also an author, right? So I sell books. I go to conferences about this stuff. I speak all over the world on this stuff. I also teach, that. So I'm teaching at Texas A&M University, and I teach at SMU down the road here in Dallas. So I take on these things. And then the latest one that I'm getting into, and we talked a little bit about it, was this idea of wrapping technology around the Mindstate model to make mind states more kind of accessible for researchers as well as content creators. So, in my book, I talk about how do you uncover these subconscious factors that you can use to make better marketing. And it was from a conversation I had with somebody who went through my program. They said, Will, I love this stuff. I love applying Mindstate marketing to, they're an agency, to our creative, but we push out 50 posts a day just for one client. How do I integrate this methodology and this philosophy across 100 different employees to where it's always embedded into there? And I said something very superficial, like, well, it just has to be part of your culture. And looking back, that's probably a bit embarrassing, right? How do you know how it is? How do you get your culture, all 100 people who come and go, and they have their own priorities and their own wants and their values and beliefs? How do you really integrate Mindstate marketing? Well, maybe it's a technology solution as opposed to a cultural solution. So I'm now getting involved with artificial intelligence and wrapping it with natural language generation to where we can take mind states and apply it through technology to where you can hit a button and the words will come out for you. So that is a whole new area of business. And I think it's a big idea. But as we go back to, you don't have time for your business. So as you bring on new things, and this happens to me a lot, you lose focus. You just lose focus on other businesses. So I've got 5 legitimate businesses that are happening in one way or another. And by bringing on this 5th one, I know I'm going to have to make decisions on what other parts of the business should I at least de-emphasize, not invest in. So my point on this is, when do you know when to pivot? Sometimes for you guys, if you're like me, where you're into all these different types of businesses and opportunities, you need to be able to know when you don't have time for your core business, then there's a good chance that you need to pivot something away. Because one thing I will say is that when you focus on always starting a new business, your old legacy business suffers. And if that's what's driving revenues for everything, then you're hurting yourself by focusing so much on growth that you will run out of cash because you're not focused on your core business. And so if you don't have time for your business, it's probably a good sign that you should pivot, get rid of something, de-emphasize something, so you do actually have time to focus on your core business.
Yeah, that's a hard when you're trying to develop an initiative. In the long run, it's going to be very impactful. But again, it's as a leader of a business, we're in charge of directing resources that we have available, and they're finite.
Mm-hmm.
We're just a small 1-man show, 2-man show, 20-man show, whatever. 20 people show, but we don't have the luxury of unlimited resources, and so therefore, the ones that you do focus on, they need to come back to your why. I really believe, and I think that helps you with your pivot conversation.
It does. So if you guys, if you're listening out there, if you took all these, you notice how they all actually kind of come together. And, if you're not passionate about your job or your company, if your customers aren't happy, if you're focused on too many initiatives and not in your core business, then you're not going to make enough money. So these all kind of work together, right? So the idea here is that these are 4 things that I'm going through or have gone through that I made these big pivots. Those pivots have sometimes worked on my behalf. Sometimes they haven't. I think most of them have worked on my behalf, but it's important to know when the time is right to reflect on your business and make a big change. Because if you don't, then some really bad consequences can happen.
So, Will, we're at the end of our conversation here. I've enjoyed it. I love this conversation. This is something that everybody wrestles with, and it's like you don't have a lot of people to go to and talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to hear folks conversate on something that everyone wrestles with. And what do you do? How do you approach it?
Are you asking me? Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm just.
Yeah,
no,
how
I'm
do you
just,
approach it? Exactly right.
Yeah. Okay, so we want to feed some ducks here. So, Will, people have been listening. They like you. They want you to look over the shoulder, give them some advice. What do they do?
Yep. So what I've noticed in my business is that some people just need a helping hand. They just want to get some direction. And they know that Mindstate marketing is important, but they don't know how exactly to apply to their business. So what you can do is you can go to mindstategroup.com and you will find these boxes that say book a consult. And if you want to book a free consult with me, you and I will sit down for 30 minutes. We will talk about your business and we'll actually look at your advertising. If you're so wanting that kind of advice, I will actually look at your advertising with you and we'll talk about how I would adjust some things based upon the book Marketing to Mind States, just to make your marketing just sing a little bit better for you. So if you want kind of somebody with you, in the trenches with you, looking at and optimizing marketing, go to mindstategroup.com and you can schedule a free consult with me.
Speaking of Will's book, if you haven't read this book, go get it. Marketing Mind States. People approach decisions every day and they tee up in a state of mind. If you're not aware of what that state of mind is that folks consider your solution, then your messaging is missing the mark. It's falling short. It's a one size fits all. How cool would it be if you could actually make it resonate better with the folks that have a certain state of mind when they consider your product or solution? So get the book, Marketing in Mind States. It's in all the stores, right? Can you get it in Target?
Target.com, I bet you can.
Yeah.
Listen, all that stuff on the bookshelf. I once had a very famous author tell me that's all just for vanity purposes. Like, you don't make any money when they're on the shelf. Like, I used to go in the airport, Steve, and I'd look for my book. And I was like, and one time I had somebody say, if you want your book in the airport, here's what you do. And I asked my author friend, he's like, Will, it's all vanity. There's no margin in books in the bookstore. So he made me feel better about it. So I'm like, good, I'm not going to do it.
Well, we don't write the book to make money off the book. We write the book to make relationships that come from the folks that read the book and appreciate what you're talking about.
You got that right.
All right. So here we go. Let's see if I can do this using the technology that I adopted when I needed to pivot. Here we go. It's called the Mindstate Marketing Outro. Hey, be sure to listen to our stuff on a podcast, any of the podcast channels you love. Subscribe to the Mindstate Marketing Hour. And if you like to watch it, watch on YouTube. So Mindstate channel, we've got our videos there. So there was this movie with Peter Sellers and it was called the Gardener, I think is what it's called. And the only comment he would usually say is, I like to watch. And so I thought about that when I said, if you like to watch, my mind went to that movie. It's a really funny movie, Peter Sellers, The Gardener. All right.
I haven't heard that name in a while.
All right. Well, any last comment before we hop off?
No comments. I'll see you guys in about 2 weeks. We're doing this show for 2 weeks for a little bit of the summer, but we'll be back. Oh, and I think pretty soon we're going to have a guest. Guest going to be talking to us here really soon named Brooke Tully. So I'm looking forward to introducing you all to Brooke Tully and her movement. I'll just leave it at that. She's creating a movement.
Awesome. Exciting. All right, folks. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. We'll see you next time on the Mindstate Marketing Hour.